Hello, hello, everyone. Hopefully, we're live, we're recording, and we're getting started. Everyone, my name is Mike. The company is called Cavill, and we're here every week to help you get the people in your business right. What does that mean? What does this all mean? What are we doing here? This is new for us, so I'm kind of excited. This is something that's a kind of a new setup, something new that we're doing right now and trying to get put out, to get put into place. So what is it all about? Clears his throat quickly. Everyone, we're here. We're your HR specialists. We're focused on helping you to get the best out of your people in your business right now today. We're looking at focusing how to get your people to help and support your business to grow, to get the right people into your business and take away those pains, those headaches that we all suffer from. Every business, every charity, whatever you are, whatever you're set up to do and achieve, we're all here for a common purpose, and that is to grow. If you want to grow, if you want to increase your capacity as to who you can help, what you can achieve, how big your business can grow and your turnover and everything else, then the people in your business, 100%, bar none, are going to be critically important to that. The success of your business, charity, practice, local authority, whatever it is you're building or a part of, is all predicated on the individuals in your business. It's all built upon the people in your business. If you don't have the right people, you're not nurturing those people, or you're not looking at how you can get the most out of those people, then you will get the opposite to success, which is failure. And we're here every week to try and help and focus on some topics that we want to go through. So I am your HR man, the guru. No, I'm not guru. Definitely not guru. But I am here as your HR man to help to get to the bottom of some common topics. I want to touch on some major issues. You can see right now, our topic for today that we want to talk about is staff strikes within the NHS. So what I want to do on this, I just want to caveat, guys, girls, everybody out there, before we get started, this is not a political video. We are not talking politics. I will go nowhere near that shit. And that's the other thing. I will swear and curse every now and then in these videos. This is not a political stance. It is not a political video. I don't care if you're left, right, in between, whoopsie, whoopsie. I don't care. I don't care what colors you prefer. I really just don't care. It makes no difference to me. I'm here to help business, not politics. So, but I do want to come forward and discuss some things that obviously, I know with this one, it's going to strike and hit people with political persuasions of all sides and sizes and colors and all sorts of different jazzy bits and pieces. And do you know what? I mean, that's absolutely fine, but leave that at the door. Pick it back up when you get back out. Right here, we want to talk, we want to learn, we want to see what things can actually happen. And bearing in mind, a large proportion of our audience that we reach out to are within the NHS. They're within also GP practices, which, by the way, if you're not part of that, they're not part of the NHS, by the way, just to kind of keep that in the fore. We want to talk to people that are within, obviously, CCGs and CSUs. They're on the front line of primary healthcare. So we want to reach out to all those audiences. And you know what? This is my viewpoint that I'm going to be talking about right now. This is me just ranting on about my kind of viewpoint, having the experience I've had working within the NHS, predominantly, I don't know what's going on with my words today, predominantly the majority of my time at work has been within the NHS. A lot of the work we've done as a business has been in the NHS or been within primary healthcare NHS or being within primary healthcare within practices, GP practices. So for me, there's a wealth of experience that I have that comes to the fore there. For the reason I say this, because I think in this day and age, you need to quantify and qualify why you have that opinion you do. So what your background is of speaking about it. And it doesn't mean that if you don't have that background, you can't have a persuasion or, you know, a point of view on this, absolutely you can. I'm just qualifying my persuasion has come from that background. And the reason that that's really pertinent to this subject, I feel, and I was talking to one of our clients yesterday, in actual fact, they work in social care. And they also had quite a lot of work within the NHS sphere in the past lives. And I won't mention any names, so if they watch it, they'll know who they are. But they've sat on boards and all sorts of different bits and pieces. They've got an awful lot of experience as well. And it's quite interesting having this conversation about this particular topic, about the strikes in the NHS and everything else. And one of the things we've both absolutely 100% agreed upon was, if you've never worked in the NHS, and if you haven't worked behind the scenes in the NHS as well, so depending as well where you're working within the NHS, you don't truly see what it's like under the skin of that beast. You don't truly see the other side that's kind of masked for a lot of purposes to members of the public that have never been into the NHS for anything other than touchwood checkups and routine kind of things. Or perhaps you have relatives that have been going through the NHS and you've had that experience of services provided by the NHS. And for me, it does open up a window to look into the soul of this being, this beast that's there. It's almost like a religious entity within the UK, the NHS. It gives you kind of a viewpoint into the centre, and you can kind of see some of those bits and pieces. And there's a reason why both me and our client who now works in social care don't work directly in the NHS anymore. There's a reason, partly the reason that drove me to set up Cavil is from my experiences of working within the NHS. So I want to bring some of that topic to the conversation today, rather than just talking about nurses' pay, you know, and everything else that goes along those sort of lines about the strikes and all of that stuff. I also want to talk about, you know, is that the right mechanism? Is that the right mechanics to try and incite some change, meaningful change? It's going to have an impact on this behemoth of an organisation, by the way, that is the NHS. And I don't think people really fully understand that as well. When they look at the NHS, they see it as the NHS. But you've got multitude of different trusts. You've got NHS England, NHS Scotland. You've got, like I just touched on, primary healthcare, which is separate and different as well and run in a different way. You've got CCGs, you've got CSUs, and how they came out of the whole kind of fiasco around primary healthcare. So, you know, P's and all those other bits and pieces that are there in the background history, if anybody remembers those. And I think all of that's really important to throw it into this conversation today. Because one of the things for me, and I'm going to put it out there, like I said, this is a touchy subject. I know people are going to get triggered in some way, whatever persuasion you're on, whatever left or right, it happens to all sides. It's not one side. This is not political. But I know it's going to have that kind of impact for those people that are watching. And it's all right to disagree with me, by the way. I'm not saying that I own a monopoly on this opinion. But I genuinely believe that, do you know what? I think nurses do deserve a higher pay. Do I think they deserve the higher pay that they're currently asking for, the nearly 19% crazy amounts? No. It's unrealistic. It's ridiculously pie in the sky, unrealistic, never going to happen. So I'm just going to put that out there for a minute, okay? Let that marinate on the side for a minute. I do think they deserve higher pay. I don't think they will get, or that it's even reasonable to put forward such a ridiculous figure. And these are not just restricted to nurses. Nurses is one of the biggest, but there's been some gigantic, enormous increases that people have been requesting and asking for, whether you're looking at train strikes, whether you're looking at the nurses, whether you're looking at teachers, you know, whatever it is. And we've got strikes for everything these days at the moment in time. They're all asking for really high amounts. And I get the reason why, because of inflation and all that lovely, wonderful stuff. But you've got to imagine, right? The choices that we make will have consequences, good or bad, they will. And increasing wages by that amount on one grouping of staff opens up the windows of opportunity for the other areas to expect the same. And why shouldn't they, to be honest? But equally, on all sides, whether it's just one or many, the figures that we're talking about, just point blunt for me, don't make sense. We can't afford it. And at the end of the day, it's going to come back on us somewhere down that pathway. So if we put these things up, they have to come from other places. And again, I'm not getting into the politics of that. So leave that to one side. I just think that there has to be a compromise. I do think that has to happen. But one of the interesting things that goes around with the strikes, it's particularly within the NHS as well, is the whole point of persuasion that, look, if you're out on strike right now, you're out on the street, you're holding your placards and you're shouting your thing, asking for people to toot their horns and all the rest of that jazz. If you're doing that, what's the impact on patient care right now? So there's appointments, there's surgical operations that are being cancelled, put on hold, or put back again. Bear in mind, we've just gone through a whole process of, this huge backlog that's been built up because of COVID. We're now having to delay things because of strikes as well. So it's just adding to that kind of mess. And part of the argument is you don't understand there's risks already. And for me, part of that is it's like saying, look, if I'm in there at the moment in time, there's risks to patients. Yes, you're right, there are. If I'm out here, then there's risks to patients, and I could be increasing it slightly, and I agree to that. But there's going to be risks anyway. And it's almost as though you're trying to say, and this would be my nan in my mind, going to me, look, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Because it's wrong that the service is wrong in the first place doesn't mean it's right to then add on top of that because of these bits and pieces. Those 2 things together, going out on strike, is not going to guarantee a better service for me as a patient, or for my family members as patients, or for your families and you individually as patients having to go through the NHS system in one way or another. Going on strike is not going to guarantee that. And I think one of the other things with the NHS is just look at the size of these budgets that we're talking about. And you can argue this whichever way you want, by the way. And that's the beauty of stats, right? So you can take a statistic and you can turn it and spin it whichever way you bloody well want and whichever way you please. The fact of the matter is this is a mega organization, the NHS. It's huge. It's one of the biggest organizations in the world. And anybody who goes into the NHS and you go through induction programs gets taught that process as well. So it's massive. It's a behemoth, okay? It's huge. And it's staggeringly big. The amount of people it employs and the budget that it has is massive too. And when you talk about the amount of money over the past 20 years that gets thrown into the NHS, there's always increases. You can say, yeah, that's right, Mike. But, when you account for, obviously, all these interests and the other bits and pieces, it works out that actually it's a lower amount. So when you count it all up and you round it all down or whatever you have to do to it, it works out that realistically the budgets are shrinking. But we're putting more money in. So the problem is, for me, is you can keep throwing money at a problem. I can keep throwing shit at the wall. It's not going to redecorate my house. If you keep throwing money at the problem, it's not going to fix the bloody problem. It just doesn't work that particular way. And part of my other issue with these strikes is that when you talk about it, you say, well, look, do you know what? We deserve to be paid the correct pay for the job that we do. Agreed. I agree with that. But paying us the right wage will give us a better quality of service. And the rationalization behind that is that people will therefore then stay. And that is not, those 2 things don't mix together. They don't compute. That's a bad argument in my book, for me personally, because I feel that in actual fact, paying someone more money does not mean they're going to be more committed. Paying someone more money does not mean they will not leave that job. Paying someone more money does not equal more employee engagement and productivity and output. Paying someone more money or paying a role more money does not guarantee that someone else working somewhere else is going to want to come and work in the NHS. Those things don't equate together. They just don't. I mean, I remember when we started out, we were supporting a moving completely away from the NHS for a second, but we were supporting a client in the hospitality sector. It was a restaurant, and they were going through massive turmoil. So financial problems. They had this massive tax bill that they had to sort out as well. Trying to keep things running. The staff were poor. It was an Italian restaurant. The family were Italian. They hired in different members of their family, brought them over from Italy, hired them in. They paid for them to stay in a flat by the side of the restaurant. They paid their rent, their council tax. They bought them cigarettes. Talk about healthy work styles here, but yeah, they did all this sort of stuff to try and help them. They had other people they brought into the business as well. The guy who was cooking, by the way, was also related to them, the main chef. And they brought in these other staff as well, and they had a mixture of people on 0-hour contracts and a mixture of people that were on permanent contracts. And it was just all up in the air. It was all really weird and topsy-turvy. And you'd think because it's a family-built business, the family would be committed to it. They weren't. They just wanted their money. They wanted their cigarettes. God damn it. They wanted their roof over their head. The other guy in the back just wanted an easy life. I just want to rock up, cook the food and go. I don't care. He didn't give a shit about the food anymore. He checked out years ago and was just there. I mean, I don't think he even knew why. And then you've got in the mix of that these other regular Joes that are just working, and they couldn't give a shit either. And they got one guy and they tried to keep him on. And they over time, before we even got there, had gradually increased his hours. They'd increased his pay. He was the most paid. He's the highest paid person in the business. And we're going back to probably, I don't know, 2010, 2009 sort of mark. And this guy was on a salary of somewhere like, I think it was between £25,000 as a waiter. And that was his take-home pay. That wasn't the overall for a full-time equivalent within a business. He was part-time. And he was getting paid that money. If you were to make him full-time, he probably would have been closer to the 35, 40K. So this guy was on a ridiculous amount of money. It was insane. It was wrong. It was a red point that just stuck out like completely when you went into the business to have a look. He was the least committed. He was the poorest employee you could have taken on. I mean, he was just absolutely ridiculous. He'd be late. Sometimes he wouldn't turn up. You know, they were so scared of losing this person that was so uncommitted and so drastically impactful in a negative way on their business that they felt that they had to do that. They felt that they had their arm twisted behind their back. You can make comments about that. That's ridiculous. Why would you do that? And all those sort of things. Believe you me, I did the same bloody thing. It is insane. Why would you do that? But paying someone more money, giving them more cash, does not mean they're going to be more committed to you. It doesn't mean that they're going to give you a better service. Money is not the be-all and end-all to solve all of our problems in this world. If it was, it would have been solved years ago. It is not the only thing that people relate to. So let me put it this way. One of the things we always talk about is if you take the employees, people in general, have 5 core things that attract them to work somewhere. 5 core things that attract them to work somewhere. And this make it easy. Just put it out there. And the most common one that everyone will get straight away, money. Let's take money off the table. It leaves us with 4 things that aren't money that are also important to people. It's not just money. It's also about things like the environment people work in, the location of where they're going to be working. It's also about the culture, the people they're going to be working around. Maybe it's even about the hours. Is there a degree of flexibility? Can I work this job around my children? I've got to take my kids to school in the morning and I've got to pick them up in the afternoon. Can I work it around that these days? There's so many different variables now that are important intrinsically to us past just money. Money is a means to an end for somebody to be able to pay their bills. You need it. It's a necessity. It's a requirement. But it's not the only thing. It's not the only thing. And if you are measuring just on that, then you are going to get nothing but the wrong people in your business, because they won't give a shit about you and they won't give a shit about the people that you're dealing with. The only thing they give a crap about is, am I going to get my money? They'll be in at 9, they'll check out at 5, and they'll go, and they don't care. They're not there for you. They're not there for what you're trying to do or achieve. They're there for themselves. And you know what? That's fine. They're not wrong for being that way, but it just means they may not be the right person for you. It's like all relationships. You don't just strike up a relationship with any Tom, Dick, and Harry and have a long-term relationship with them. You've got to have a long-term relationship with people that you actually want to be around and share a part of your life with. This will be exactly the same. So for me, just throwing money at the problem in this way and just increasing people's salaries left, right, and centre doesn't mean all of a sudden the whole workforce in the UK is going to miraculously overnight suddenly be excessively productive. Because believe you me, if you look at the problem right now, the UK PLC is massively suffering from a productivity gap. And that's the biggest problem right now between us and other competing markets and countries is, and whether you like it or not to hear it, it's fact. This is not an arguable thing. We aren't as productive. We don't put out as much as we should be doing. You can say, Mike's saying we're lazy. Yeah, okay. In some cases, you know what? Some people in the community, they are just bloody lazy. They are. It's just a matter of fact. But the point is this isn't about laziness. This is about outputs. If I'm coming in today, what is it I'm meant to be achieving? What are the actions I'm meant to be taking? And am I taking them? You know, we are unproductive as a workforce in general in the UK. And I'm sorry, but just paying everybody in the UK more money will not magically overnight make us more productive. It won't. If a guy goes from earning £35,000 a year to £50,000 a year, that's great. That's fantastic. Does that mean he's going to be working harder? Does that mean he's going to be achieving more? Does that mean he's going to be better with the time that he has in the workplace to get the things done that he needs to get done? Does that mean, you know, everyone's busy, but not everyone's busy on the right things? You've got a number of busy fools that are out there earning lots and lots of money. Throwing money at them doesn't mean they're going to be less of a busy fool. So I just don't, I mean, I agree that, you know, people within the NHS, nurses in general, and by the way, when I'm talking about this, you can't unlink social care from this process. They've got to be all included. The two things, if anything's from this process in COVID has taught us, these two things are inextricably linked. You know, I know that there are homes near where I am that have vacant beds, that have got floors in buildings empty with beds. Yet the NHS Trust is in critical measures because it doesn't have enough beds. There's a problem with the process there. And this is what brings me on to my next big problem is one of the things. So just to put it out there, my experience of working the NHS is, and this is bearing in mind, I get it, you know, it's from an HR standpoint. That's not the be all. I'm not a nurse. I've never been a nurse. I've not worked in the front line of care. So why would I know that? Yeah, I get it. You're right. Okay. But I do know the behind the scenes. So I know that when you go into work at a place and they say, Mike, the biggest problem we've got here that we need support on is culture. Yeah. Because everybody, we get people that come in new and they're sitting next to people. So we've gone through this whole interview process, recruitment, which costs a lot of money. We've got these people in, they sit down next to their colleague, and they introduce themselves, and the colleague goes, why? Why did you come and work here? Why? So they've just suddenly found themselves opting to go into a gulag or something. It's ridiculous. Like, why did you do this? You've entered into some kind of prison camp. Why did you do that? Why? And it really turned, obviously, non-surprising here, it turns people off when you come into environments like that. You know, it's when the NHS is constantly going through, depending on what organisation you're in, through reams of different types and styles of change. We're going to centralise. Now we're going to decentralise everything because we think that's going to work better. You know, we're going to close. I mean, this is another great one. When I started out, my early days of working in the NHS, and I won't name locations on this, right? But my early days of working in the NHS, I was at university and I was looking for somewhere to do my sandwich year. And for those of you who don't know, that's kind of going out on work experience as a university student, but paid work experience. And I got and secured the role in an NHS trust near where I lived and where I was going to university. And that was fantastic because I knew I was going to get thrown into everything. And I did. I mean, I had friends in university that did a lot of pencil pushing and learning and stuff, which was good. But they didn't get into the nitty gritty. I was supporting on redundancy processes. I was supporting on sickness absence and disciplinary investigations. You know, I'd never worked in HR before. I was studying it and I got thrown into the fire. And the reason for that was pure and simple. They didn't have funding for anything else. So it was just a handful of you there supporting this massive trust. So if you aren't going to step up and do this, then they've got a problem because there's a gap there that they've got to fill. So you get thrown into everything. And before I started, they'd gone through making a redundancy process. They'd just gone through consultation and redundancies within cardiothoracics. Okay, so they've just gone through that. At the same time, in parallel to that particular decision, what was the trust doing? They were spending, at the time, it's going back years, by the way, they were spending £60 million on building a new cardiothoracic unit. So I just want to put that out there to everyone. 1 year, they're spending £60 million to build a new cardiothoracic unit, whilst in the same year of building that, they're making redundancies within cardiothoracic. Do you want the point that came out from that's quite clear? They had delays in opening the unit because they didn't have the staff to staff the unit because they'd made them redundant. There was no forethought as to the direction. There's no strategy and principle. It's just, you know, budgets are tight. We've got to look at where we can cut back. Let's do this, this, and this. Oh, crap. Now this has happened. We spent some capital funding on building this new cardiothoracic unit. We've got to staff it. Well, you haven't got any staff. You just made them bloody redundant, man. What are you doing? Oh, shit. Let's hire some cardiothoracic specialists. Well, that's bloody terrific. We just, what the hell? So you're constantly chasing your tail. And that's that for me. Over a period of time, you start to get to a realization where is this thing's so big. Like a trust is so big, but the NHS in general is so big. You can't handbrake turn an oil tanker. It ain't going to work. You know, this thing, it's riddled with all of these weird, zany managerial decisions, managerial processes, bureaucracy, and other crap that's just there because that's the way it used to work. You know, you can't really change so many things. And it makes you feel kind of superfluous and ridiculous. So you'll be going through periods of, well, you know, managers don't want to do performance management because that's a confrontational subject. So let's just create another Band 8C role and stick them into that. Oh, great. Okay, so we're paying someone else, you know, what's that, like about £70,000 to keep them out of the way from causing problems rather than actually moving that person out of the organisation, which is what you should be doing. So we're keeping baggage. You can't actually implement any real change that's going to make any real difference because you can't do it. You know, if you did it in silo, if you did it in one department, in one team, it's going to get sounded out and kind of infiltrated from all the noise elsewhere within the organization, from other teams and everything else. It's never going to work. These things are so big, you can't change them in that way. And it was almost so demoralizing to realize that we've got all these things we can do. We can implement this. We can do this kind of change. We can do these things. We can try and reduce spend on these bits. To then be hit with people that will be like, I don't want to, I don't feel it. I don't like having confrontation with people. I don't like going down that particular road because it's uncomfortable for me. You know, and you end up with a system that is just like a runaway train that you can't control, that you can't impact on. There is nothing you can do that's going to help with this. So you've got a choice. And your choice within that is I either stay here and collect money and really at the end of it feel I've not achieved anything. I've not even kept things above water. I'm not achieving anything here in any way, shape or form because I can't. There's nothing I can do. Or you get off and you try and impact in other ways. And that was the option that I've taken. You know, for me, it was really frustrating. I'm passionate about helping businesses. I'm passionate about helping teams. I'm passionate about helping people. People spend 30% of their time awake at work. I want those people to be able to enjoy that 30% of their time and not dread it and hate it, because life's too bloody short. And it doesn't help the business if that person hates being with you. You know, that's not a relationship. That's toxic. It's never going to work. And for me, it just felt as though within the NHS, it didn't matter what people did. It didn't matter how good people were, how committed they were to the cause. They were never going to make an impact and change things. And that's really pessimistic. It's really demoralizing to look at it in that particular light. And I get that. I hear you. I know. But it's really frustrating to sit there. And it doesn't, by the way, I've been in so many different NHS organizations that it's the same. It's just different types of shit. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to being the same situation, which is I can't achieve anything. I can't change anything. I'm just here literally working on a project right now. But then tomorrow, there'll be another project of change or another thought that will go in a different direction, or more problems will come out the woodwork, or the change that you put in place doesn't last or is ineffective. It's so demoralizing to realize that there's nothing you can do to make that change. And I think for people, and again, coming back to the person, one of our clients I was talking to in social care, they said exactly the same thing. It was just, you sit there and you're thinking, this is why are we making this decision? This looks insane and crazy, yet that's the way they go. And then after spending lots of money, they come back and go, oof, that didn't work out how we planned. We all told you that. We could see that. There's other things we can do. And at the end of the day, it just feels as though you're trying to move forward, but you've got both arms tied behind your back. There is very little you can do, very little impact you can have. And there's just so many problems within that organization as a whole, within all trusts and primary healthcare, all of that. They all have it, and they have it in varying degrees and varying levels and varying types. But it is so many problems that are there. And my biggest issue from knowing that is I know full well that giving nurses and everybody else more money, whilst that will make me feel intrinsically very happy with myself because we've done that and that's the right thing to do because that's what we feel and because that's the political kind of scope that we're in, trying to keep that out. But, you know, that's the whole jazzy thing that everyone wants to feel good and warm about. It's not going to have the meaningful change that we want. We can give 19% to nurses, but in 5 years' time, would the NHS be a better organisation? Will we be able to attract and keep more people? You know, at the end of the day, money is not the cure-all of everything, especially when it comes to these particular elements. And just throwing the money needlessly at it is insane, because the other thing with the NHS is it's a sponge. It will soak that shit up. You throw money at it and it will just soak it up and go, more, give me more shit, please give me it. But it doesn't mean it's getting to the right places. It doesn't mean it's solving the right problems. It doesn't mean that it's changing it to a degree that's going to give you, me, and everyone else a better healthcare. It doesn't mean that. There's a lot more that needs to go on beneath that. And I don't personally, for me, I'd be open. I don't have the answers for what that is and how that looks. I just know that simply throwing money at it isn't going to change. It's not going to alter its course from what it is right now. And it's not going to guarantee that you're going to get nurses wanting to take up employment and be working within it. You know, it's not my children. My children are 14 and 9. So throwing more money into the NHS is not going to persuade them more in the future to work with the NHS than it does now, you know, from that kind of position of things. It's not going to alter that dial to that much of a degree. It's not going to be part of that decision-making process when they're thinking about, I'm doing my GCSEs and A-levels, where is it and what is it I want to do? And there's an irony behind that, by the way, because if you do know me personally, my youngest daughter wants to be a heart surgeon. That was never it's a weird one to have on a 9-year-old's list, but that's where she is right now. That can change, but that's where she is. But, you know, these things is not going to, my daughter doesn't want to be a heart surgeon because of the money. My 9-year-old doesn't have that concept right now about that kind of process. She has the concept of money, of course, but mainly mine. But she doesn't have the concept of that forethought of, I want to pick a vocation that's going to pay me lots of money. She hasn't got that right now. She's doing that because she's inspired by Nightingale, and people like that. That's what's been taught to her at school, and she's been really massively moved by that over the past couple of years. This isn't just a 1-year thing, and she wants to be able to get in and help people in the same way and make a difference, and that's what she wants to do. And that's the reason, not because of money. Money is then a secondary thing. It's going to be important, of course it is, and I think even as a 9-year-old she'd realize that, but that's not the overall reason why she wants to go and work there. And that's the absolute antithesis of this whole point, is just making the wages bigger is not going to guarantee people are going to want to work there or work there for the right reasons. Because you don't want people just working in the NHS just for the money. And by the way, this comes from a backdrop of one of the key components, and this isn't me, this is Brandon Dawson from Grant Cardone and people like that have taught this, and we pick it up as well. And I absolutely do believe in it, but it's not my idea, not my analogy, but it's called the PPF. And we talk about it all the time. So you'll hear this now, you'll hear this on other sessions that we'll do as well in the future. But PPF is all about personal, professional, financial, those three elements: personal, professional, financial, PPF. And the principles of that are to have a harmonious working environment that people want to belong to, that they want to be a part of, to have that environment, and to create that culture. You need to stroke all three of those elements for individuals, all of them individually. And individuals, it goes without saying, are individual, right? So it's not going to be the same things for everybody. There isn't a carbon copied, I keep hitting this mic stand. It's no carbon copied kind of cutout that you can use and apply to everybody as they come in. It doesn't work that way when it comes with people. But you've got to look at the things that are personal. So this person is going to have a personal life. They are going to have a life that's outside your working environment. By the way, there's very little impact you can have outside your organization on that person's personal life. But you need to account for that. And we need to be able to see how we can help them to facilitate having a good quality of personal life. Because if you're having personal life problems, I 100% guarantee you, from experience of myself, they will come into the workplace. You bring that shit with you. You carry that baggage. When you're going through crap in your life, hands up, we all go through crap in our lives. When you're going through crap in your life, it's impossible not to just tune yourself out from that and then come in and be a different person. It don't work that way. This will be on your mind. It'll be there. You'll be carrying it through the day. So we want to make sure that we can help people to get a good quality of personal life. We want to support them through those things. Well, that's things like EAP services. So that's employee assistance programs. Looking at helping supporting people with counselling services. Looking at helping support people with finances and stuff along those sort of lines. Trying to help people with things like occupational health, to making sure about their well-being in the workplace. You know, all these things that are termed in the what we would call the fluffy shit that a lot of employers, especially small employers, and I'm generalizing there, slap on the wrist, I'm sorry, but just don't have a lot of time for, because they're just looking for a body to come in and do the job. And employing people, unfortunately, is not like buying a washing machine where you just pick it up, plug it in, turn it on, and it does what it's meant to do. People are unique. We are different. We're much, much more complicated than a fucking washing machine or a printer or whatever it is, or a computer. We aren't like that. There are different things you need to take on board, and there is no one size fits all, because we're individual. It's in the clues in the title there. So you've got to adapt, and you've got to adopt different things to look after people in their personal well-being. You've got to look after them professionally. You've got to give some kind of career pathway for people to come in and feel that I'm not stagnated. I'm not coming and working for you, and this is it. And I've had employment like that, where I've walked in and there's been people there, and you ask them, how long have you been in this team? 20 years. I don't want to be in the same role for 20 years because I have aspiration. Aspiration is good, by the way. There's a lot of aspiration bashing right now, but aspiration is good. It's good in the workplace. It's good in general. We should be aspirational, and we want aspirational people, but we want to be able to show a career pathway as to how people can grow within your business. And by the way, people growing in your business means your business must equally be growing, because everything expands. Yeah. If I take a fish and I put them in a small tank, they'll grow to the size of the tank. If I then take them out and put them into a bigger tank, they grow to the size of the tank. That's how you can get massive goldfish, right? So you've got to apply that same principle to your business. So you want to look at the personal and the professional, but we also have to account for the financial, because we live in we live in a financial world. Like it, loathe it, you can lump it. It makes no bloody difference. We live in a financial world. Goodwill will not buy my shopping. Being happy doesn't get my house warm. Yeah? Money is needed to purchase things. Yeah? I can't say that my happiness levels are going to pay for my mortgage. They're not. They're just not. So people, with interest rates, the problem we have is the cost of being able to live in this financial world has gone up, right? And it's harder. It's difficult, and it really is. But we've got to do what we can do within our limits. And what I would never say to any business is you've got to go and pay massive amounts of money. You need to pay the amount of money that's right for the role that they're doing. Not every role is the same. So this is another thing. You can't compare apples and pears. They're not the same fruit. They're not the same. You can't compare a chief executive of a business with a porter. They're not the same. Every role is important. Every person, every output they provide is important, but they're not the same. It is not equality in roles. A porter will not have the same responsibilities and burdens as the chief executive has, right? They have other problems, yes, but they're not the same level. You can never argue that. These are different roles. That's why they're paid at different rates. But you need to work out what that competitive rate is that equally enables those people to live. And by the way, when we talk about financial, for us, we're not just talking, ironically enough, about money. It's about other benefits you can provide. And sometimes some of those other benefits don't always cost more money. And I want to come back onto that in a minute as well, because that's pertinent to nurses. But the point is you've got to focus on those three things. If one of those things are playing up to the person struggling with money, it can cause you problems in the workplace. If that person doesn't feel they've got a career trajectory, they're not going to stay. It's going to cause you problems in the workplace. If the person's having personal problems in their personal life, there's a lot of personals there, well, guess what? It's going to have problems in the workplace. So you need to help and support your staff rather than turning a blind eye to what you do. But you've got to remember, it's not all about that money. And that comes down to the benefits part as well, bringing that back in for a minute. So one of the things I think not a lot of people know, if you don't work in the NHS, is this thing called Agenda for Change. Oh my God. I remember when I started working in the NHS the year that Agenda for Change started to be introduced. So before that, they still had these things called Whitley Terms and Conditions and Trust Terms and Conditions. So you'd have, the reason was you'd have a mix of different terms and conditions. And those terms and conditions, like the trust ones, could be different depending on what trust you're working in. Whitley was a little bit more wider scaled than that. But at the end of the day, you had those different terms and conditions. It moved and it all came together in this lovely cohesive process called Agenda for Change. Now, what happens with that is people that work through the NHS, by the way, get a wonderful pension. And I don't think that could be denied. They do. So if you're in the pension scheme with the NHS pension, you get a very good pension indeed, by the way, especially compared to other more like nest pensions that you'll be getting through smaller businesses and things along those sort of lines. It's a really good pension you get. The other thing is things like sick pay. So just putting it out there for someone who's worked there, I think over 5 years from memory, you'd get 6 months half pay, 6 months full pay when you're sick. I can't tell you. I mean, the amount of organizations we talk to, the amount of clients that we have, the amount that pay what's called occupational sick pay, that's the bit above SSP, is really low. So many businesses out there just pay SSP, which is pittance for someone to live on. If you're on long-term sick, you have any degree of long-term sickness, SSP is bloody hard to live on that for any period of time. It's going up in April. That's a separate video, but it's going up in April, but it's still going to be low. I mean, you're looking at just over 100 quid. It's going up to 107 pounds off the top of my head as of April. That's not a lot for a lot of people to live off of. And by the way, not every post qualifies for SSP. So if your earnings are below the threshold, then you don't qualify for ZIP. And the first 3 days, you get nothing anyway, unless it's been the COVID thing, but you get nothing. So, I mean, it's so ridiculous. So when you compare that to 6 months half and 6 months full, and I will tell you now, from working in the NHS, how much that is abused. I remember one NHS organisation, we did this massive piece of work in HR, and a lovely lady that I worked with spent a huge amount of time building what I actually still believe was a really good sickness management policy, and it did work in a good way. The thing that lit it down was the payment for sick pay, because what I remember we were going to introduce it, we were going doing these presentations to managers and staff as to how it works and what they can expect when this comes in. This is all the build up to it coming into place. And they didn't know who I was, but I was walking up some stairs at the time on my way to one of these particular presentations, which is an irony, and overheard a couple of nurses, not picking on nurses, by the way, here, but a couple of nurses who were talking about how much annual leave they get per year, how much sick leave they get per year. They were adding that up together. So they're talking about, I get whatever my annual leave is per year in days, plus I've got this entitlement to the sick leave as well. It was treated as though it was an add-on form of leave that they get, not something that's there to help people when you're unable to come into work because you're genuinely sick. It's there as a top-up kind of thing that you can take off a sickness absence. And that just boggled my mind, because I just thought, there you are, that's my case in point. Here we are, we're developing this great policy. It's there to help managers, to give them the tool set to manage sickness absence. Sickness absence comes with a massive cost. It also has huge impacts, especially in places like the NHS. Magnified, I would say. Okay? You come out with this great policy as to how you can do that. It sets things up fairly to treat staff in the correct way, to make sure that if someone is absent, that they're getting support. That support is at the forefront of that, not just trying to get the person out of the business. We're trying to help people. You're an NHS organisation after all, right? So that was the focus. But regardless of that, no matter how well intended it was, no matter how well thought through it was, which it was, no matter how well written and designed it was, which it was always going to suffer and be unpicked, because it was going to suffer from abuse because of these extra benefits. Benefits are there, like the tax system. Oh my God, I'm trying not to get on political things here, but it's there, like the tax system, to try and help promote particular actions and outputs. So you'll find that, the government will give, for example, they'll give a tax benefit for getting an electric car. That's there to promote you to go and buy an electric car. Benefits at work should be the same thing. They should be there to promote certain activities that you would want to do to get those benefits. Giving people such exorbitant amounts of pay on sick pay promotes what? Nurses and people, not just nurses, within that organization to see the access to that extra sick pay as additional leave that they could tap into. It was something to be abused, not to support. It was counterproductive. And that was a huge learning curve. That was when I was on my sandwich year. It's a huge learning curve as to, how ignorant I am, personally, me, to certain things. And oh my God, I mean, that was no more emphasized than when I did some work within the police force. But working within the NHS, you suddenly have your eyes opened. My first time working in HR, I'm trying to soak everything up as a sponge. I'm keen, I'm eager to go, and I'm getting involved in everything. And I'm loving it. I don't always know what I'm doing, but I'm learning. And I know it's going to make me a better practitioner, and I'm going to be better at what I'm going to do because of this experience. It was gravy. It was good. But this was just an eye-opener because I'm in there kind of blinkered. Like, oh, this is amazing. This is good. This looks good. This on paper, this is incredible. Oh, we're doing these wonderful things. We're doing that. Okay, there's some weird stuff going on over the cardiothoracic unit, but look, this is good. And then you hear these kind of stories and people talking this particular way. And then you see it when you're managing sickness absence all the time. Exactly how much of that is rife. I mean, the benefits that nurses and I don't know why I'm saying nurses there, by the way. It's everyone in the NHS. It's not just nurses. They're not the only ones on the agenda for change. Everyone is. So the benefits for everyone working within the NHS are actually quite significant. And I think sometimes that's massively forgotten. I think it's also largely unreported. And I think when you're talking about just pay, like I said, PPF, financial for us is not just about how much you're taking home at the end of the month. It's also about those other benefits, because all of those things come together. They all come together to help and show kind of how you can stroke that kind of process for people. So, for example, one of our clients at the moment in time, bless them, are having to go through quite significant redundancies right now. So I've got to say, by the way, as a sideline, that's one of the worst things. I hate doing that as part of our job, but it's part of the job. So we're going through these redundancies at the moment in time. They need to have an incentive to retain some people past their notice periods. So that's another key essential for them. They've got to continue to keep people past that particular period of time. So to do that, they're providing incentives. So if you're staying past 1 month, I think off the top of my head, they get in £300, 2 months at £600, and 3 months, I think it's £1,000. But something along those sort of lines. So there's an incentive there. The reason that incentive is there is exactly the clues in the title. It's to incentivize people to want to stay past their notice period, because they whatever they do, they still got to provide the support and care they're providing at the moment in time whilst they're working their way through this process. So that if everyone just went off and off they plot, because the notice periods don't necessarily cover that, then in which case they're going to have to go into agency staff, which is going to be counterproductive to everything they're trying to do. It's not going to give the best quality of care because you haven't got the continuity of the people that are there dealing and supporting with those individuals. So they are incentivizing it. So you can't just look at the financial prospects and area of that just from the money and the salary. You've got to include the benefits that you're providing as well, and those bonuses and all those other bits and pieces that come into play. And for those in this particular area, so like on the Agenda for Change, there are a lot of other add-ons that people do have. Right, I'm going to bring this to a conclusion, and I'm going to guarantee that we will be coming back. This is a live. It goes out every Thursday. So every Thursday we're here coming live. We're going to be here helping you to get the people element in your business right for you. And I want to be asking, I'm asking you to come forward to us as well. Let us know what are the pertinent issues that you feel you'd love to know about. Disagree with me, agree with me. Let me know which one it is, why you disagree and why you agree. Discuss in the bottom between yourselves. I love having the open dialogue. I don't have a monopoly on opinion. I don't, but I can have a lot to talk about from experience that I bring to the fore as well. And the fact that I think with this particular problem, I don't think those strikes are going to help resolve the problems that people are saying it's going to. And I get the funny feeling in some ways that's just a missold kind of emphasis for why things are happening to try and put pressure to get what people generally want. And I, like I said, I don't disagree with some of that, but I do with other parts. So it'd be interesting. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your feelings. Back to me. Let me know. So thank you very much, everyone. End that there. So have a great weekend. And we'll see you again. We'll be on again, and we're going to be doing different subjects. I think next one we're going to be covering, by the way, before I go. So hang around for the next one. If you're watching these back on YouTube, by the way, you can go through. Or again, they're going to be on our podcast as well. So hang around for the next one that'll be coming in on the series, which will be talking around some of the potential of the actual changes that are happening around employment law right now. It's going to be insane. There's a lot to talk about on that one now. So thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Bye.